seagulls follow the shore, it's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you.
And as we say now in my country, they brought the bus and they left the bus in front of the goal.
And the guy's talking absolute nonsense. Never heard so much rubbish in my life.
Normal men.
What do you mean, normal men?
We're just innocent men.
I'm telling you, don't back down, double down. Don't back down, double down.
It's the Monday Club on a Tuesday again. You better believe it. We are back. It's been a while since I've been on, Jonathan. I've been on since Saturday. That's like, and I'm not back on till Sunday because I'm moving out. So like, I've caved from the detox as well. I've got a fucking couple of beers, man. I need it. I'm stressed, man. I'm stressed. All this setting stuff up and all that.
What moving house does to you? It's what moving house does to you.
Aye, I'm just like, oh fuck this, man. I'm going for a couple of beer. I went and got them about an hour ago. I've had one. It's been good though. I've enjoyed it. It's good to have you on, Jonathan. And I know that we tend to do the Monday Club on a Tuesday, so a big shout out to all 91 of you that are all part of the Tuesday Club, Monday Club on a Tuesday, whatever you want to call it. And yes, we've got loads to get through tonight. There's some good talking points that I think we've probably not addressed as much as we would have liked over the last few days, whether it be with a lack of shows or whether it be because there was the game at the weekend that we kind of focus more on that. So we will be talking about ticket allocation. We'll be talking about Leila Bada, and we'll be talking about VAR again, and potential new future and how they operate VAR you were telling me about before we went live. That'll be all exciting stuff. But before all the exciting stuff, all that good stuff means hit subscribe. 3,474 the last time I checked, which was about 10 minutes ago. So I doubt there's any more since then. So yeah, make sure you get the subscribe button. Cost you fuck all. If you want to give us a like and a share right now, that'd be amazing. The likes enough though, it gets more traction. Over 100 now in the bus. That's because you beautiful people keep hitting that like button. So please keep doing that. If you want to become a Bhoycie Bus member, like Joseph McGonigal, like Scott Cameron, like Jim Dolan, like GP 1888, like Ali, like D-Mac, not seen you in a wee while, D, hope you're good, like Stoned Outlaw 1888, like San Fran Celtic, and of course, the man who makes all the members, Tattoo Face Tantrums. It is $1.99 a month. It's totally optional. It does help keep the wheels on the road. Obviously, this is the final week, Jonathan, as well, where you can buy the Bumblebee shirt. So yes, make sure you drop me a wee email, crookedarm@ymail.com. The final order is going in on Friday. Be a part of bus history and make sure you get your shirt. £40. Look at all the attention to detail. Look at that cracker. You'll be getting yours this week, Jonathan.
Yes, I will indeed.
The rest of the podcast members can expect theirs to arrive. Should be Thursday, Friday. They'll get theirs. It's a shame that they've not getting to promote it as much as I would have liked, but who cares? And when I say the final orders are Friday, I'm going to be that up to my eyeballs and moving house. You might get away with ordering it over next weekend anyway, to be honest with you, because I'll probably slip my mind, try to sort of contracts and all this shit, you know. It's just to be overwhelming for me all, Jonathan, you know. How many times can I say Jonathan tonight? That's one of the questions as well. I always like to get out there. Let's play Jonathan Bingo. Let me know how many times I say his name. Whether it's you and David Logan, for some reason I just say your name at the end of every single sentence. I don't know what that's all about. Anyway, big shout out, Jonathan, not just to the passenger.
Just laughing. You said it again.
I give up, man. I don't even know what I was going to say there now. Why did I say your name all the time? So stupid. Anyway, we will be having some good debate tonight, I think, about the ticket allocation. I've got a few different takes on that. I've got to say, I don't know if anyone's a boxing fan who's watching today, but if you've not seen it, just watch TalkSport Simon Jordan versus Eddie Hearn after the bus, obviously. Fucking hell, that is golden YouTube hour. Like, that was amazing today. The best debate about. So I want more of that back and forward on the bus. You need to fucking start picking some more fights on here, Jonathan. You know what I mean? Jonathan, fucking hell. Here we go. Patrick McLaughlin counting. He's in 16 times already. Yes, thank you, Pam. We'll see. We'll see if, you know, if I don't burn it down in the first week, we'll be doing all right. Right, okay. Ticket allocation was hot off the press, Jonathan, at the end of last week. Said your name again. And it was being, what the hell, man? And it was something that we're getting fed by the media. I mean, I listen, obviously, as you know, to the phone-ins and all that. It's just kind of, I'm a creature of habit. Finish my work. Clyde one's already on before I've really thought of it. I don't even know why. I suppose it's mildly entertaining. But anyway, the naughtiness of some of their takes at the weekend or Friday, whatever day it was, you know, and I like Hugh Keevins. I've said that before. He's a bit controversial, a bit like myself. I like all that. But the same things like, this is a safety matter now. The rivalry's never been so toxic. All this crap, right? There's an elephant in the room here. The elephant in the room, undeniably, is one club only. What's happened over, you know, if we go back to the start of this happening, was we were in a situation where Lee Griffiths is tying scarves to the posts. We're beating them with 10 men. You know what I mean? When we were all up against it, apparently. We have got Lustig skinning full teams, scoring belters in at the far corner. Got Scott Brown in sunglasses. All these just be examples. And, of course, the optics look like a full stand partying. Now, bear in mind, just bear with me here, Celtic didn't design Ibrox. That's a you problem, Rangers, how your stadium is, not a Celtic problem. That's how it goes. Okay, so that stands rocking, and there's 5 goals being scored on a regular basis. There's defeats left, right, and centre occurring, and they ain't liked it. And Dave King has stooped to a new low level, even for him, and went, any sort of advantage I think Celtic are getting could be maybe that support, you know, that stand. And he's what he's done, he's pandered to the masses. Okay. He's went to the masses and he's basically went, look how, you know, we're taking back charge, you know what I mean? And all this bollocks, right? And they've reduced it to 700. Celtic were then between a rock and a hard place, because what's actually happened is Celtic reacted the only way I think they could, which was going to be they're going to need to follow suit until this is resolved. My guess would be Celtic thought this would be a short-term, they've spat the dummy moment, as opposed to dragging on, 4 or 5 years later now. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
This was something, when Celtic replicated it, they thought was going to actually drag on this long. I think they thought they'll see sense. They're in the cream puff because they're shite, right? But even winning a league title when there was no fans there, ironically, wasn't enough for them to sort of start playing ball again. And we find ourselves now in a situation where Celtic's actually decided, you know what, enough's enough. Enough's enough. Let's call the bluff. There's a game upcoming. Yes, it could be vital in terms of us cementing that title space. And do I think Celtic will have enjoyed being able to go, look, do you want to bring 7,000-8,000 to Celtic Park next game? Because we're going to rub your faces a wee bit, and then you'll reciprocate it. Maybe there was a wee bit of that, but the reality is it's a decision that should be getting taken, right, for the fixture as a spectacle. And from a broadcaster's point of view, I've got a few points on that I'll bring up as well. Now, what's actually happened is they've said no, they've not backed down, they've doubled down. And Celtic have said, well, that's your lot. It's either goes back to how it was or it's nothing. Thinking they'll see signs. We're not fucking about. You've called the shots for too long on this. And we bowed to it eventually. Now it's, as Ian McIntosh says in the comments, now it's all or nothing. Rangers would rather nothing. That tells you, one, fear. Secondly, just another example of one club, and it's always the same club, doing, well, always the same club, see what I mean? But it's always them who have to be awkward. Now, what we find is, if anything they can go against the grain with, they'll go against the grain. If you tell them the sky is blue, they'll find a way of telling you it's no. It's just ridiculous, right? We've now got a situation where there's going to be no fans at it. And San Francisco's absolutely right. The broadcasters could step in, for example. They should have made it part of the contract. I get that. And what really frustrates me is I see a lot of it in the live comments on here, and I get it to an extent. People think Sky's a big problem here. Sky's just committed 7 years of cash to Scottish football. Bear in mind, the TV deal they had with Scottish football 10 years before that, right, was jeopardised. Guess what club by? Because part of the contract was 4 fixtures, 4 Glasgow derbies, 4 Old Firms as it was known then. And that was getting failed, and they renegotiated it and did it favourably at that point, rather than just halving the broadcasting rights. They kept it near enough as to what it was. Now they've got their blue chip fixture, or green chip, I could say, but they've got that fixture now diluted further because one spoilt brat in the corner is refusing to now play ball and get it back to what it was. Don't ever moan when a broadcaster's pumping money into our national sport when the reality is the clubs that are involved are not exactly helping making it that sellable a product if you're a broadcaster. So there's loads of avenues to this, why it's absolutely ridiculous. I do think a lot of it comes down to the partying aspect. I do think a lot of it comes down to fear. But I also think it's about time someone who's in charge, whether it be the SPFL, I know that is the clubs technically, but there is a board. There is that Neil Doncaster chap who pops up when it suits him. Someone's got to, grab them by the collar, do you know what I mean? And go, you want to start playing ball here because you're jeopardising everything as always. You're not going to get more broadcasting rights. You're going to cost us here unless you start playing ball. That TV deal is an example of where broadcasters value our game. This is another example as to why they don't value our game at the levels of EPL or English Championship, probably more at League One level, because it's embarrassing the pettiness that we see time and time again, whether that be other away teams Celtic need to go to, who would rather have empty seats than seats taken up. Yeah, that looks good on Sky as well. It's all just so obvious. It's getting ridiculous, but that's my rant over about the fan allocation, Jonathan.
Yeah, I think you've covered most of the bases off there. I think when it comes to the fan allocation, I think pretty much most people want to see it return back to what it was. It adds to the spectacle. It's more fun when you've got Celtic fans in the Broomloan stand, Rangers having their corner. You're actually going to have a bit more fun with the back and forth if you're in the stadium as well. You've actually got somewhere to aim your abuse and your cheeky songs towards, when they're in this stadium, and it does add that little bit extra needle to the fixture. And you've got to remember this fixture is built more so on the fans a lot of the time. Now, this isn't the same sort of fixture as it was perhaps 20 years ago for me, where the quality on the pitch was extremely high level, even from an English media point of view, and they were really all over it because the two clubs, for me, were capable of competing right at the top end of the Premiership 20-odd years ago, whereas now, I think in some ways that the quality, certainly by Sky, probably isn't seen anywhere near the same sort of levels, and the sort of marketing of the derby fixture is now more upon the passion, that the sort of atmosphere that the fans bring to those types of games, and it's really diminished quite a lot by the fact they've had to reduce these allocations. I think it was only a matter of time before Celtic did ask for this, in all honesty. I think, that corner at Ibrox does seem to get quite a lot of targeted abuse into it. There's certainly been a few occasions, not just with Celtic, but with other sets of fans that have gone and sat in that corner, where there have been instances where objects have been thrown into that area of the stadium, and it's a lot easier to target away fans when they're in there. And I think, of course, that does have alarm bells ringing from a Celtic fan point of view, and from obviously the club's point of view as well. And they're right to be raising these concerns with Rangers. The Rangers might flip it and say that there's something going on at Celtic Park that perhaps we're not as privy to, and perhaps Rangers fans feel that they get likewise a similar treatment by not having as big an allocation there. But I've never really seen as many examples of that. But, at the end of the day, it's based upon the fans. I think there has to be a sort of coming together with this, because the allocation numbers are ridiculous. You can barely hear the away fans. Rangers, did it to try and gain an advantage, and to some extent it worked. They got a few results at Ibrox, but bear in mind, Celtic have still managed to go to Ibrox and win, even with the smaller allocations on a few occasions as well. So it's not exactly as if it's a total game changer by any stretch of the imagination, employing those tactics, and it does just feel a bit cheap to try and get the fans bought over from Rangers' perspective back when they brought it in. For me, I don't know if they'll ever now resort back to the Broomloan stand. I kind of feel Rangers have made their stance now on it, and they would be very reluctant to give us back that stand, because they would feel like they've almost surrendered, and they're a club that don't do surrendering, as they like to always chant from their own stands. So I think, if you're looking at it from that perspective, I think there would need to be a common ground on it, Russell. I'm not entirely sure if we get the full amount back, but there certainly should be more than 700 fans. I think, the compromise that looks obvious to me on this is you go what they do in Europe, and that is where you get a 5% allocation for the away fans. And, whilst that won't be quite as much as what it was previously, it would certainly be a lot better than what it is currently, or what it's going to be in the next couple of games, where you're not letting any away fans in, because it just looks amateur hour for anyone that's watching the game outside of Scotland. If you're turning that on and you support one of the English clubs, and you're thinking, well, this is obviously one of the biggest games in the UK, supposedly, in terms of a marketing sense, and then you're putting it on and you're like, well, where's the away fans? Where's the atmosphere with this? It just comes across ridiculous to me. And for me, I think if they can't get it to a point where they're willing to give us the Broomloan stand back, which I don't think they will, I think Celtic would be willing to negotiate, though, and I think Rangers are being extremely petty over it, is how I'm viewing this at the moment, until I'm told otherwise. But I think if a compromise was to be reached, I think, Russell, even if you had 3,000, for example, in both stadiums, surely that has to be a happy medium that both clubs could agree on.
This is it. I mean, eventually someone's got to, they've got to be whipped into shape somehow. Do you know what I mean? Because right now it just feels like any rule that's there that they can abuse, they will. They've got a mindset of we're bigger than Scottish football. They're in their own wee train, and it's full of pish, and it's just designed to accommodate and pander, as I say, to their more idiotic, their more staunch side of things, right? And it's all nonsense, because at the end of the day, we need to be able to look at it a wee bit objectively. Now, I get the I mean, the only thing that I suppose I could say I'm a wee bit torn on is I find it a wee bit frustrating when we debated about the Green Brigade having a full standing stand, and a lot of people were very much on the basis that, well, that's people's seats, you know what I mean? And then they'd be open for having Rangers fans taking those seats. I suppose that argument I could understand to an extent. However, it just feels for me that this fixture now, Celtic have done, in my opinion, they've probably been more patient than I would have been, but I do think they've reached the right conclusion by putting that ultimatum, if you like, to them. We shouldn't really be surprised Rangers have went the other way on it. But as I say, these things all have domino effects, and eventually your broadcaster will get pissed off. Do you know what I mean? And someone needs to start flexing their muscles other than this club in Scottish football. And someone needs to start taking a wee bit of, challenge them. Do you know what I mean? Just say, what is this? What is this nonsense all about? What is the point of this? Why are you doing it? It's all about you. None of this has anything to do with the better of our game. None of this has anything to do or any sort of afterthought for that broadcasting deal is pretty important to all the clubs, especially them. But this is a league that we find ourselves in who don't seem to think anything's bad with any of their affairs whatsoever. In fact, it's the only club who could have generated, an extra 60, 70 million in the last 12 months they didn't expect, and yet only be able to spend a minuscule, less than 10% of that in transfer fees. No one's asking why in Scotland. It takes UEFA to decide to put a magnifying glass on them for us to go, funny that they're a person of interest, if you like, to their financial fair play regulations. Never ever of any interest, though, to the governance, those who are governing Scottish football. It just seems to me we're at a stage where that fixture's now getting diluted, and it doesn't make sense to me why they keep getting pandered to. And I think it's easy for me at times to critique Celtic, but just because I love them. Do you know what I mean? I want them to be the best they can be. But on this occasion, I think you've got to kind of say, do you know what? They did the right fucking thing. Do you know what I mean? They've called their bluff. They put the ultimatum there. Whatever the response is, our cards are on the table. And ours are for the betterment of the fixture as a spectacle to loads of people who watch it outside the country. And you're absolutely right. It does end up looking a wee bit embarrassing. I think it's nonsense when you're hearing the MSM talking about the health and safety aspects got too far. Health and safety is worse right now the way it is. So you can park that silly argument, as you were touching on. It's just a load of shite. I am glad that we've called our bluff on it. And I think the genuine truth is, if everyone was being honest with himself, and I don't expect it for Bob in the comments, but if he has been honest with himself, there has been now, it's been exposed. This is a Rangers who don't want to do this now, and there is no real reason for it. They've been offered, we've decided to go for to make the truce and get it back to what it was. They still don't want it. And I think we can at least now look at the rest of the league if it's frustrating them, or look at Sky as a broadcaster, etc., and go, this ain't on us anymore. Do you know what I mean? This isn't a Old Firm problem. We're happy to walk through the arches. You know what I mean? But you don't want the fans there. This is the Old Firm, just without two sets of fans. Very good.
Yeah, it's it is a bit ridiculous with the whole thing, and I don't really buy into the health and safety part of it at all, because I certainly think Ibrox have touched upon the fans are in more danger in that corner. And even when Rangers have had the Broomloan stand, you can actually look at the players as well, because remember, it's not that long ago, only 12 months ago, Joe Hart almost got glass bottled when a glass bottle was thrown onto the pitch at half time, and they were having to pick out shards of glass from behind his goal. As well, to suggest that I'm not saying Celtic fans are always saints, but I don't remember there being as many problems when Celtic had the Broomloan stand as to what's happening with us just having the corner now. And it adds so much more to the actual fixture for me as well. I think Celtic need to try and get this resolved. Rangers need to try and get this resolved. And the interesting thing is Celtic are now approaching this at the right time, Russell, because season ticket renewal is going to be going out fairly soon, and you've just touched upon it yourself. If we're going to go back to some sort of allocation allowances to what we had previously, then that's going to impact on season ticket sales in terms of what Celtic and Rangers can offer season ticket holders that would normally have those seats. Because what was happening before, if you remember, was you could get a season ticket for, say, Celtic Park, but they wouldn't include the Rangers games because you were seated in one of the seats that would be for the Rangers fans when they came to visit, and vice versa with Ibrox as well. And that it's critical, that if they are going to come to some sort of agreement that allows the fans in, and it's going to be a bigger allocation than what we've seen in the last couple of years, that is sorted out in the next few weeks. Otherwise, you're going to be looking at a full season of potentially no fans or very minimal fans if Rangers get their way again next season, and then that's going to be it rolling on for another year. And the longer it rolls on, the less likely Rangers are to actually budge on their position, because they'll feel, well, we've kind of got our way anyway, and why should we move on to try something else? So I think it's almost going to be a case of now or never, because the longer it rolls on for, the less likely I think it is that it'll get looked at again. I would be interested to see if it's something that the SFA or SPFL, whoever's governing this, were to have a look at, because the rule book does seem to suggest it just comes down to the clubs to agree, but I don't really know if that's in the best interest of Scottish football as a whole in this particular
Why can't
instance.
they swing some sort of fucking influence anyway? Get yourself tooled up and start, nudging them in the right direction. What's the point in even having an SPFL board if they've not got the bollocks or the courage of their convictions to actually go, all right, this ain't working. This is what we would like you to do. Everyone's scared of them. Nobody's got the bollocks to actually say anything to them. They run amok. And as Brown Warrior said in the comments, it was only 12 months ago they were refusing to wear the actual official sponsor of the league. All this nonsense, that since debacle, that was worth, again, X amount of millions to the league over, so many years. Again, it's, well, that doesn't suit our business needs. It's always this bullshit, and everyone's got to go, oh, didn't upset them too much, though. I think everyone's missing out, in my opinion. And I don't see it being a Celtic problem anymore. As far as I'm concerned, they've washed their hands of the situation in the right way by calling the bluff, and that's what they've done. Anyway, that'll be the first debate out of the way, Jonathan. And anyway, we'll go on to Celtic affairs now. And Leila Bada is being linked with a move away now. This is an interesting one because I've got a few takes on it as well, unsurprisingly. It's amazing what one can of Stella can do. But, I mean, Leila Bada is a player who's played, every single game that he's been fit for this season?
Yeah, he usually either starts or comes off the bench. He's a pretty big impact player. He's certainly a big important piece of the jigsaw for Postecoglou, no doubt about that, over the last couple of years.
Show me a club that has a player who plays in every single game of the season, whether it be from the start or from the bench. And we know how much our subs are used. Our subs aren't brought on for 30 seconds. They're brought on for at least, that sort of half-hour mark to make an impact, if not a half-time. It's not quite the old school sort of substitute coming on for the, just to run down the clock. That's not what Abada's been doing. Not many clubs, no matter what level, would be wanting to lose such an asset that's played in all these games. We're hearing, though, different Celtic fans, you're seeing it on social media now going, can't we just let him go now? And I'm like, fucking hell. Okay, fair enough. Are Celtic, though, in danger of setting a precedent that we sell easily? Now, I know Andrew's got that laid back to me, and if they don't want to be here, they can go. And I like it. I respect the honesty. I also think, though, from a selling point of view, it's not maybe the best message to be sending out. Because to a buying club, that means they think low ball offers. They start looking at Leila Bada as £7-8 million, which is chump change, as we've discussed so many times, down south. It is championship fees now, that is, not even EPL fees. But when that message is across, if they don't want to be here, they can go sort of thing, then they're going to come in with that low ball offer, despite the length of time these guys have left in their contracts. Now, I know it's been spun really kindly that Giakoumakis and Juranovic were OAPs, they were 27 and 28. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay. I thought their values were higher than what we got for them in the end. Juranovic, I think, still was a fair fee. I thought the Giakoumakis one was way lower. And you're now in that territory where that sets a precedent, I think, maybe to a buying club. They'll be aware of this and they'll go, okay, you can still rock the boat and make a low ball offer. Then you do have a really unhappy player in your hands if you're rejecting these offers. And your mantra is, if they want to go, the door's there. And before you know it, you're then bowing to bids that aren't great. Now, Scott Howe comes in. Love Scott Howe in the bus. He's saying, take 10 million, catch you later, Abada. I mean, people were talking about Juranovic in the £20 million mark and stuff. This is Leila Bada, who again did double figures for both goals and assists this season. He's got 4 years left in his deal, 3 years left in his deal. And the amount of goals and assist contributions he's made, I think 10 million. I think we'd be selling ourselves short. Would I be surprised, though, if he were to go for such a fee based on the two departures we had in January? No, I think we're in that sort of territory, in that space now where we look inadvertently. I think I'm just trying to be pro-Celtic in that, if you don't want to be at Celtic, the door's there. And I like that message, but I also think it comes with a knock-on effect that we're open to business. And it might be easier to prize our players away than we should maybe be making out. That's the way I see it. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I'll certainly be interested in one member of the pod's take on it because, as we know, Terry has been a big Leo Labada cheerleader since day one, and he's seen him going quite far in the game. I think if you were to ask Terry for 10 million for Abada, I think he'd laugh you out the door on something like that. And I think Abada has came up with some huge moments for Celtic and was certainly a large contributor to Celtic winning the league title last season with some absolutely crucial moments. He knows his way to goals. He's somebody that you always fancy to have the likes of, Barisic on toast when they come up against Rangers. So I think from that perspective, you'd rather try and keep hold of your better assets. Of course you would. I think when you're looking at the positioning plays, perhaps the sort of blaseness with it from some sections of our support is the fact we are extremely strong in the wide areas. Now, I'm not saying that I would be selling Abada for 10 million because of that, but it is another contributing factor as to why clubs might look at it and think, well, Celtic are quite well stocked in wingers. He doesn't start every week. They might feel that they can then go in and make those sort of low ball deals because of the fact that there is the opportunity there that Celtic can look at their strength and depth, particularly in that area of the pitch, and say, well, we can kind of cover our losses there. I think the other part of it as well as to why Celtic might accept a bid, because I expect if Abada goes, it'll be for between 10 and 15 million at the moment. I'm not saying that's what I value him at, but I think that's where we are headed with him. And I think another part of that reason is because of the fact that Postecoglou has done a very good job on recruitment. And I think in some ways, perhaps there could be an element of complacency there at the club that because his record is so good in the transfer windows thus far, they might just think, well, he'll just turn another one of Leo Labad out or somebody even better. Now, it doesn't always work like that in the transfer windows, and it'll take another shrewd bit of business from Postecoglou to find an even better player than Abada. I'm not saying he couldn't, but it is something there that I think in some ways, because he's been so successful in the transfer window, Russell, I actually wonder sometimes if that might come back to bite him in the sense the club might be relying so heavily on him identifying another player because he's got such a good track record for it, and that might encourage them to sell cheaper than they actually should. If Abada wants out, I think Postecoglou will do the deal, and I think it will probably be around the 10 to 15 million pounds. But I think it's going to be because of those sort of mitigating factors that Celtic have at their disposal, not because they're actually getting value for money, pound for pound, for what the player is worth, in my opinion.
I agree, and I think this is where it's interesting, because I suppose the other argument is this flipping of players. You might be seeing players leave for a lower fee than we think they're worth, in fact, or what they actually are worth. Just tell the truth, what they are fucking worth, right? But you might be seeing that because it fast tracks Angie's evolution of the team, rather than holding out for what the real market value of a Leo Labada would be. Maybe Angie's like, yeah, but the sooner we get 10 million, and rather than having to wait till next January or next summer to get the 15 to 20 that I think he's worth, for example, that's speculative figures, by the way, but say it was that, for argument's sake, he might rather the 10 million now and go right instantly with it. However, notwithstanding that, you need to also remember this is a club cash rich as it is. So that need for sale shouldn't also be there so much. And maybe that's where you get these heads of recruitments coming in, or why Eddie Howe was going to have a director of football. I know Ange likes, having that sort of autonomy, or it seems like he does anyway from the outside. I don't know that for a fact, obviously. But I think sometimes you also need to go, well, whoa. We're not actually having to sell here right now. Yes, I get the whole, we don't want a disruptor in there, but has Abada really struck you like he's someone who'd be disruptive? I don't think so. We're not privy to day, but I highly doubt it. And put him in shape if not. He signed a 5-year contract with us. Sick of people thinking, footballers thinking they can hold clubs to ransom. This is Celtic we're talking about here. Nobody's holding us to ransom. Do you know what I mean? Certainly not people that we've put on the map.
I think it's more down to the agent. I think it'll be more the agent than
Yeah.
Abada. I don't think Abada's the type that's going to be rocking the boat. I could imagine it with Giakoumakis, possibly somebody of that character. If he's not happy, he's going to let Postecoglou know about it. Abada strikes me as a much more quieter figure that's quite happy to go about his business, and I think it'll be his agent. That'll definitely be the one in both his year and Postecoglou's year, saying what's going on. He should be getting more game time, etc., putting the feelers out to find out what other clubs might be interested to see if the likes of a Southampton could be tempted to put a bid in. I think this one absolutely is coming from the agent. I still don't know where Abada stands on it, because I think, to be honest, if they were to get...
I feel he's been hung out to dry a wee bit right now.
Yeah, I feel sorry for him, to be honest with you. I do feel a wee bit sorry for him, because I'm not so sure if, let's just say, for argument's sake, they did put in a low ball offer of, say, £6-7 million to try and start the bidding off to see what they can do, and, Celtic would be right to reject that. I don't imagine Abada being the type that's going to go straight banging on the manager's door saying, why is that offer been rejected? I think he'll just put his head down, and I think he seems like quite mature for his age, because he's still a pretty young player. His best years are definitely still ahead of him, which all point towards great asset value from a Celtic point of view to get more cash for him somewhere along the line. This isn't the same as, Juranovic or Giacomakis. I take your point. They weren't extremely old players, but there is no doubt about it in modern day football. The younger ones that are in their early 20s have got that potential resale value and definitely can attract higher transfer fees. That's just the way the world is now when it comes to footballing transfers. But I think when you're looking at somebody like Abada, I think he's got his head pretty screwed on for his age, and I couldn't see him kicking up too much of a fuss if clubs did try and get him on the cheap and Celtic held firm. My concern is I just don't know if Celtic will hold firm, because I just think there's a few reasons that they might think in the background that they might be able to flip him rather than hold on to him. And, I guess, Russell, it all comes down to this. If Celtic were to sell Ange Postecoglou for £10 million, let's just say for argument, because that's the figure being quoted, would you trust Ange Postecoglou with that £10 million to find a better player?
Well, yeah, first and foremost, of course, I absolutely would. I suppose it comes with a certain couple of caveats. Why would he not be gifted £10 million if he's got a player of said value in mind already? Because as far as I'm concerned, the tools are there. If he identifies a player in that sort of price range, then selling Abada shouldn't be critical to whether he can go out and get them or not. Because I think delivering 2 Champions League group stages, obviously with 2 titles, would actually warrant that if he wants to sign a player of that sort of value, go and do it then. On you go.
Would he not maybe think, though, if he was going to get another winger, he might feel he needs to get one out, because they have got quite a bit of, quality in the wide areas. It's a fairly stacked area of the pitch. You've still got the likes of Forrest still lurking in the background, there as well. And granted, I'm not expecting him to play too much more, and certainly not overly frequently under Postecoglou, but there is maybe an argument that he could end up overstacked on wingers, perhaps, and that could then end up leading to frustration then if, for example, he keeps Abada, brings in somebody for £10 million that is instantly up there as an undroppable player. He's that sort of level above what we currently have, that you could then end up pissing off one of your existing wingers, and then, if Abada's not getting the game time, his value is obviously going to drop, and then you're not going to even get the £10 million for him. So there is kind of an alternative argument to that, I think, as well.
But also though, and I used the word precedent at the start. This works 2 ways. I was talking about that from the potential buying club, that they think Celtic's an easy sell. They'll sell the players. The manager's got this open door policy, So those players are there, and they've got the body of evidence. Giacomakis, Jan Juranovic, one's played in the third place playoff at the didn't actually play in that match, but helped get his country to the third place playoff at the World Cup. The other one's Greece's number 1 striker, has been a top scorer in Holland. They both left for a combined 11 million. They're open for business. But the other thing that sets precedent as well is you don't want players to start thinking they can navigate their exit out at Celtic very easily. Because if that's all it takes, a wee bit of discontent, and no one's going to pull your, give them a wee bit of a ball and say, pull your shots up, son. We've gifted you this. We've been very good to you as well. Get back out in the training ground. You know what I mean? We've got a big season ahead and you'll be playing for us. If we're in a situation where players start going, hey, all you need to do is fucking, say you're wanting to go, have a wee bit of a sulky attitude, and that's you're out. Let's not make it too easy for players to be able to do that. You've got to strike the balance here a wee bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying, but I'm kind of looking at it more from the managerial standpoint. If he ends up with 5 or 6 wingers, that's an almost impossible scenario.
I think you'd love that.
despite how well they're all playing, he's can only pick 2 of them. You know what I mean? And it's inevitable that I'm not saying that, you know, if something like that was to happen, Abada would be straight on the manager's door. But I think if it was a case that this is going on for 5, 6, 7 months, of course, if players aren't getting as much game time as they want, then they're obviously going to have to think of their own careers. They're going to have to think of, you know, whether they want to play, you know, for their countries, you know, as well. That factors into things now too, none more so than at the moment, which is more topical because we're heading into an international break. Then, you know, I think that would perhaps force players' hands, and I think Postecoglou was quite good at managing that. I don't think he'd want too many players that can play in the same position because of the fact he's just not going to be able to get in the game time. I think he looks for a quality squad, but he wants a squad that he can actually rotate and manage everyone within it. And I think when you're looking at Abada's sort of position, if he brings in another winger and doesn't, you know, get one out the door, I think he's going to struggle to manage all of that and keeping them all happy. And it's not because the wingers he has aren't good players. They're all good players. He could pick any combination of them just now in any game that he wants. And, you know, all the fans would be probably like, yes, that's a good selection choice. Or, you know, I don't think any of them would be there like, oh, shite, he's playing out wide, apart from maybe Forrest. All the rest of them, I think, you know, we're quite comfortable with whatever combination he throws up in any given game. So it's a tricky one, I think, for Postecoglou to get right if he did bring another one in without getting one out the door. But I would take your point on a wider scale. If it was a different area of the park, perhaps, where Celtic aren't quite as strong, then that could cause more of an issue.
Yeah, because that won't be factored into the buying club's mindset or the player if they do have their agent in their ear saying a Southampton or a Tottenham, for example, are interested in you. It's not their gift to worry about how well covered are we in that position. They can just rock that boat knowing that they'll get the same outcome, knowing that the outcome's been laid out in layman's terms. I just think that was you know, when I think about this, you know, I just go, I hope January, for all I was, and I can't, you know, be, you know, a hypocrite. I thought the Juranovic deal overall was good business. I thought he wasn't as good as people made out and sold. But notwithstanding that, you've also got to flip it and go, but here, like, that was 2 first-team players, top scorer in the league the season before. Juranovic had started about 50 games for Celtic in just a year and a half, and suddenly they're sold for a combined £11 million. What message does that send to prospective buying interested parties of other players that we've got? But we can take a wee deeper dive into it as well, I suppose, because we've got no fixture this weekend. So that's the beauty of when there is international break, and there's not many pluses to be fair. But again, with the Abada links, I think, whilst it might sound like I'm panicking about it, I'm just trying to give a different perspective on it. I was thinking about it earlier on my walk for my cans, and I was like, I never thought of like that before. But one thing I have thought of before, and I think these links buy into it, whether they're factual or not, if we go on the basis that they are, there's some sort of substance to them, not for any particular reason other than this next talking point. I've described the summer that's coming up to expect the unexpected. I think it's going to be a rock and roll summer at Celtic. I think Abada will be the least of our sort of one of the least of our eyebrow raised moments this summer. I think expect the unexpected. I think Ange will be very much this ruthless nature that he kind of wears on his sleeve. Let's be honest, he's not trying to hide it, how he's going to approach it. And I do definitely think there will be players we don't expect to leave. I think there will be more ins than what we think the team needs at this moment in time, but that'll be because of certain departures that occur. This isn't me trying to act ITK that I've got any idea who these are going to be. What I'm trying to say is, I think we're just going to need to strap the seatbelts on Jonathan ahead of this summer and go, no way are we selling him, no way. And then before you know it, it's done. And I do think in terms of actual recruitment, I feel this summer will actually, I think I've learned from the mistakes of the summer just gone. As I've said before, I found the 2 January windows more compelling transfer windows than I've found the 2 summer ones. I think anyone who thinks that summer transfer window just gone was a success is kidding themselves on now. I think in the cold light of day, we've got Haksabanovic, who has flashes, who I really like, by the way, but he's had flashes. I know he got player of the month one month, but other than that, I know injuries have played a part. But is he really someone that Ange sees in his first 11 often? Not so sure. Moy has been the surprise one since the World Cup. but up till then was shit and wasn't good enough to play in the Champions League, or fit enough to play in the Champions League, I should say, at that moment in time. That didn't help that campaign, did it, signing him? And then Jens is gone, etc. I think, I just said etc. because I couldn't think of anyone else. I think this summer, if we've learned from that, I think we might be a wee bit more aggressive and a wee bit more to the point. If Ange identifies, who was it, that boy Vinicius, whoever it was in the summer, if he identifies a £5 million holding midfielder who wants £30,000 a week, I would like to think Celtic might just go and get them this time. I think you've got to learn. You can't always say, oh, we're just on a learning curve. That summer transfer window was a massive window of opportunity as well for the Champions League because we didn't have the qualifiers. Our path was laid out. We knew what we had in front of us. And I don't think we did quite enough to help Ange get the results that we needed in Europe. And I don't think that group could have been any kinder with hindsight. And you see two of them getting 7 goals scalped past them laterally. You know what I mean? So this summer, if you have learned from your mistakes, and of course you do have another avalanche of Champions League money on the way, do you think Celtic will change the mindset a wee bit? I know people will be sceptical because of the Lawwell thing, and I can't help but share those worries. But I also have to keep the faith at times and think, do you know what? If anyone's been reading the room, that summer window was dressed up by loads of Celtic fans. Was it the best window we've ever had? Abildgaard joining, shit like that? No, it wasn't. And that's been proven by the amount of appearances and impact those 6-7 players that came last summer have actually had in the first team. We don't want to do that again this summer. We've got a long summer window, plenty of time, and I know Ange thinks ahead anyway. We have got more money in the bank than we could dream of when Ange took over to be now in this situation, particularly after the COVID season. It was kind of still going on, Ange's first few games, remember. So to now be in this situ where we've got the tools, we've got experience now of it not quite going to plan, and we also are aware that even in a Champions League group that was far kinder than, well, exactly what we did think before the games, and then we kind of, everyone changed their narrative after we got humped out. But realistically, even then, the standard is a jump. Now, there's no excuse not to have learnt from that this summer going ahead. And I do stand by the fact I think there will be departures that will surprise us, but I also think we might be surprised by Celtic being a wee bit more, that's the guy I want, go fucking get him. Not the guy 2-3 down the list, not a deadline day loan signing. I want him now in the middle of June, and we're going to spend £6-7 million if that's the fee. The fee is wishy-washy to me, by the way, irrelevant. That's just an example. But I think we might be a wee bit more direct, having learned from the experience of summer 2022.
Yeah, well, I think this window is going to be absolutely crucial in terms of where Celtic see themselves at the European table. For me, it's going to be an indication of the fans as to whether or not this is a new dawn in terms of how we actually approach our transfer business, or whether it is going to be that same old story that we've seen for years and years and years, that even when Celtic know that they've got an opportunity to be playing Champions League group stage football, they don't go for it, and they don't really back themselves as much as they possibly could have. I think that's going to be absolutely crucial on so many different levels, because for me, this is going to be the sort of window where, you know, we're going into the third season with Postecoglou coming up, and if he doesn't feel like, you know, he's got the backing enough of the board this time around, and Celtic do not have a good campaign in Europe, then that might start making him ask questions as to whether or not he can continue this project and take it any further. And I think that's just one of the harsh realities, that if you're not doing the business correctly in the summer windows, and you run that risk of peeving the manager off. We've seen it before with Brendan Rodgers, because Rodgers had plans for Celtic, you know, in Europe, and he wanted to make more of a dent in European competition, and Celtic never backed him the summer before he left. And then that all just started unravelling, and I think we have to be conscious of that. There's an old saying, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. And I think, you know, Celtic have to be willing and able to adapt to the situation they find themselves in the summer. Now, I'm not saying that won't mean there won't be some big, high-profile exits. Postecoglou's already hinted that could very well happen at the AGM already, and he's already pretty much made his opinions known that, you know, if a player doesn't want to be at the club, then he's quite happy to let them depart. And that, I think, runs true for even his most important players, that if he can get the right deal for them, he'll let them go because he only wants players that are committed fully to his project. And his project is very much, I think, now going to be looking at to see how much of a dent he can do in Europe, because come the end of this season, he very well may finish the domestic season with a domestic treble. It's very much on. You know, the League Cup has already been won. The league title, he's got one hand on it at the moment. And, you know, he's only got 2 games away from winning the Scottish Cup. And, you know, if he gets past Rangers, he's going to be playing lower league opposition in the final, which would absolutely fancy Celtic to get the job done in. So he could very well finish this season having won every domestic trophy on offer to him within 2 years. I think naturally the next stage of his progression plan will be trying to get Celtic to do more damage in Europe. That is just the natural sort of progression, if you like, from what he inherited to where he can see the club going. And if the club do not back him and do not decide to throw the money where it's needed, particularly if a big player is sold, then you do run that risk with Postecoglou. And that's why I think it's set up to be an absolutely captivating transfer window for Celtic. Bear in mind, again, there's going to be no qualifiers this year. They know where they're going to be playing. They know they're at the top table in Europe. And I do just think that if they don't take advantage this time around, then they've almost conceded they're not a Champions League club. They're actually a Europa League club. And the regression is already now in full swing for me if Celtic don't get this summer window right in terms of Europe.
Yeah. I just think you just always hope that, you know, you tried something last summer. It looked good at the time. It didn't work out. Learn from it. Having said that, I mean, the 2 January windows, as I say, I've been impressed with Celtic's business. Okay, the departures have alluded to the fact they could set a precedent and stuff, but in terms of the actual recruitment, you know, you look at Hatate, Maeda, Iwata, Johnston. Who else has came in January? O'Reilly. These guys have all went back. Scoring that Sutton exact carbon copy of Sutton's header against Juventus. And before we get Phil on for the old Sutton death, Jonathan, you know, you should call it slow death, because that's exactly what you're going through right now. Is a slow and painful death, not Sutton death. What about VAR this weekend? Again, as I was saying earlier on about something else, you know, I listen for my sins to like Clyde one, and you know, one of the comments by the host was, "Oh, you know, Mr. Hawkeye must be, you know, tutting, you know, something stupid like that." He said, you know, when he sees people questioning this, of course it's factual, it's facts. That offside is offside. It's that simple. Hold on a minute. You've got players from that league, managers, ex-players, pundits, left, right, and centre, all going. For example, the Sakala one, and this isn't because I'm all, you know, I'm anti-Rangers, just as a point of principle, but you look at that still, I find it hard to believe that that's onside. I just don't get it. I don't know how it could. I don't get it. I look at Jota at the same ground, same side of the park, and they use the camera from somewhere else. Who's drawn the fucking lines, Jonathan? Who's putting these lines in? Is this, are we being treated right now to like a Toys R Us version of VAR? Is that what it is? Is it just someone's wee toy? Because I ain't convinced. I actually, if you want to know the truth, I happen to think at first glance the Motherwell goal that was scored after 3 minutes, I thought the boy who put that in looked offside. On second look, maybe not. But the Sakala one, I can't keep. The more I've looked at it, the more I'm like, I don't understand how, you know, this Hawkeye is coming up with that being onside. Again, this isn't paranoia, it's just an opinion based on that. Are we being subjected to some 2-strike version of VAR? And it's time just to go, this isn't as factual as being made out. And actually, they're sticking the lines. And they're just hoping that they can make decisions that, you know, some will say to suit one club as well.
Yeah, I think when it comes to VAR, it was a bit of a mess all weekend, not just in the Rangers game, but across a lot of the fixtures in Scotland. I always find it quite interesting because offside, I kind of feel is one that we should be able to get right no matter what VAR system we're using, because offside is a lot more black and white than any other decision. Fair enough, you can have arguments over penalty decisions and red cards as to whether or not you think they can go to VAR, and that's always going to happen. There's no system you can put into place where everyone's going to be in agreement with fouls of that nature. But I certainly think when it comes to offside decisions, those arguments should never really be happening, because there should be a way of having that all set up. The SFA are looking at it, I believe now. BBC were running an article today, Russell, where they've turned around and pretty much said they're considering having VAR expert officials, I think is what they're calling them. So that piqued my interest at first, because I was wondering who these would be, if these were going to be other officials who are bringing in from other countries, if it was going to be a case who are bringing in ex-footballers to help with the decisions in the VAR truck. But what it turns out that it is that they're thinking, by the looks of what my understanding was from the article, which was a bit vague, is they're almost looking to split the referees down.
Yeah,
into
you were
two
saying
teams.
this.
So it's going to be a case that you'll have a referee team that will not do any refereeing on the pitch, and they will just solely do the VARs every week. And then you'll have another refereeing team that will just solely do on-pitch refereeing, and they will never be in the VAR trucks going forward. So you could have, for example, like Willie Collum being told, Willie, from now on, you're going to be a VAR referee. You'll never set foot on a football pitch again as a referee. That's your job now. Whereas Nick Walsh, you're going to be in the refereeing footballing side of it on the pitch. So you're always going to be on that team. I don't really know if that fixes the problem. Because for
This
me,
sounds to me, sounds box ticking bullshit. Just like, oh, look, we're trying everything. I mean, well, what is that really going to achieve?
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. You're still going to have the same referees that are using VAR now, using it going forward. So I don't know if they're maybe thinking, well, there's some referees that are perhaps more competent with the VAR technology than others, and they're just going to use them more going forward. But for me, this has been in place now for months, and I've not really seen many of the referees that have struck me as being particularly competent in using this technology. There's none that I would turn around and think, oh, thank God this guy, Willie Collum or whoever it is doing VAR this week. He's really good at that. That's exactly where he belongs in that VAR truck, making these sort of silly wee reviews and making sure we get them all correct. I can't see it making any difference, and I don't really understand the other point of it, in the sense that if they're refereeing on the pitch one week and then they're in the VAR truck the next week, how that makes a massive difference to the decision-making process. So it'll be interesting to see when they actually give a bit more information as to what they're actually planning on doing with that, because looking at it, Russell, that just looks as if they're just dressing it up, but it's the exact same problem. I would like to see a situation, and I know this probably wouldn't happen in Scottish football, but it was always talked about in England, where they actually have an ex-footballer in the VAR truck with the officials, so they get another point of view from an ex-player, because the players tend to know a lot of things there as well, and they can bring a lot to the table. But I know
what level are we going to get to though there? Because let's be realistic here. If you've got any sort of affiliation, whether it have been coming through a Celtic academy or coming through a Rangers academy,
that's what I mean.
Played 4 minutes against Ross County for them before being sold, and it's all going to come back to that. So then you're looking at guys that never played for either. But we've probably made our minds up on half of them as well, who they support, just because that's the fickle nature of it. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know.
It's the same with the referees, so a lot of people make the same decisions with them anyway. So a lot of them think, I'm sure Mark Kearney, for example, has most of them down as being in the lodges most weekends. So I think there's always going to be that element of suspicion, regardless of who's operating the technology, unless you went completely out there and went back to, foreign referees like we did 10 years ago, where there's absolutely no doubt about it. They couldn't care less as to who wins at the weekend. I think as soon as you've got a Scottish bloke in charge of VAR, whether they're a referee or an ex-player, I think people are always going to go digging to try and find out information on them, to find out where their affiliations are. And that's just the nature of the beast when it comes to refereeing in Scotland. And I can't see that ever changing unless they decided to get people in from outside the country to actually operate the VAR, for example.
The thing is, we're looking at virtue signaling nonsense here right now. That's what it really is. It's to go, we've listened, we're making changes. There are fixes to this. And it's just let us in a wee bit. Become more transparent. Let us hear the conversation. Let us hear the dialogue, and let us find out how you arrived at said decisions that are right now just getting bandied about and used as a complete comfort blanket to every single decision. Subjective. All this bullshit. Why not? Let us know how you arrived at the decision. Let's hear the dialogue. What is it you're so... What's the problem? That's a real change. That's something that then even us, who will be wearing our green tinted glasses, will go, fuck, that doesn't sit right. That actually makes sense how they've came up with that. Do you know what I mean? And we might then still castigate it, of course, because we're fickle football fans, and I get that aspect as well. But you would have to say, even then in your quieter moments, you'll go, I kind of get that, how they've came up with that. And at least I now know the method. I can never say that word. How they've came up with that decision anyway. You'd be able to understand it a wee bit more. I think that would be the sort of radical change that would also provide and put Scottish football in a different light again, being a leader, doing something. This is an expensive task, by the way, to make them up. It costs buttons, right? But we'll never see that. We'll now split it so some bastard now doesn't need to do a beep test once every month. Do you know what I mean? They can just sit. Do you know what I mean? Just sit and chill with piesports.com doner kebab pies in the bar room. Do you know what I mean? With a ball.
That's an all right gig.
Before I mean, someone raised the point before in the group chat. Has anyone ever realised that the more VAR becomes relevant as a talking point, and the more there's an impetus put on it, the longer a lot of these guys become, the longer these guys' careers become, because once they are past it in terms of being able to do the lengths of the pitch, you don't need to be fit to sit in the van, you know. And I suppose I get that point as well, but. Yeah, I think there's radical change they could make to, and I say radical, it's not actually radical, it's just something they don't want to do because they don't want to have the microscope shone, or the torch shone on them, and there's silly, daft theories that are quite clearly at times flawed, to say the least. I think as well, the biased argument aside, and I can leave that for other people to sort of debate, but I think what they really would be scared of is their incompetency being
just what I was going to say
for what it is. Yeah. And I bet you there has been conversations that these guys have had at several times this season going, what do we do here?
Mm-hmm.
What is the rule here? I bet you they've said that to each other live, making those decisions. They don't want to be exposed for that, and that's what will happen. But yeah, I mean, again, another weekend talking about it. Everyone's sick of it. You've got ex-players talking about they would be glad to see the back of it, things like that. Just get rid of it. I mean, I knew it was going to be rocky this season. I forecasted before the season started. Phil will back me up on this. I said the asterisk season this is going to turn into, but not the asterisk like that, because it will be the VAR season. I went, that's what's going to come of this. And this is before a ball had been kicked.
Thankfully, Celtic have taken care of business so much that it's kind of overshadowed it. But yeah, I mean, if the title race was close, then you would find this was under so much more scrutiny, and it's only been because of the way Celtic have been playing that it isn't under more scrutiny than it is. Because you could imagine, Russell, see if this was a tight title race and it's only a couple of points between the clubs, the fans would be looking at everything under a microscope that was coming up on VAR. The clubs would be under pressure constantly to be calling things out if there was any sort of sign of a contentious VAR decision going against them. So I think it adds almost an extra layer of toxicity at times to the fixtures. It almost puts more pressure on the referees because they're getting two looks at it. Now, if they're getting them wrong after looking at it on a monitor, as well as actually seeing it live, that people aren't going to have faith in them, and it's just going to be a case that for the people that want to believe in conspiracies, they're going to have more ammunition to go at the referees for these sort of things. So it needs to be ironed out. Yep. I think making the referees up would be a very welcome step forward, because at least then you could hear the conversations. But I'm completely with you. They will not want to do it because they will feel utterly humiliated by some of the conversations that would then be getting aired out to a wider audience that they just do not want to be sharing with them, because it exposes them as not being very good at their jobs.
What really fucks me off with that is, in football, you're allowed to hold 21-year-old Leo Labadis to account on the whim of a rumour that he might want out, which could be complete nonsense. It could be a young defender, 19, 20 years old, scores an OG or gets sent off, has to do an interview after it. It could be a manager who's learning his trade and we're all able to say he should be sacked, calling for someone's, employment to be terminated. That's all okay. But when it comes to a ref, the highest paid part-time job in the world, by the way, 900 quid a game, $1,000 a game, on top of their actual salary. These people are, whoa, that wouldn't be fair, asking them any questions or, finding out how they arrive at certain outcomes. No, we can't do that. I think it's a strange space that referees find themselves in. People might think going full-time is an answer. What right-minded part-time referee right now goes full-time? Why would they? You're not going to improve their wages. They make more having a full-time job and doing refereeing part-time than they could ever make refereeing full-time. We don't have the budget to offer them $100,000 a year refereeing. But if you're a teacher and you're also a referee, week in, week out. Like Willie Collum, for example. I'd imagine you're on a pretty healthy salary between the two per year. That's going to take one hell of a convincing to get these guys to go refereeing full time. That's the rock and the hard place the SFA found themselves in by bowing to these demands. They just seem immune of any sort of accountability, questions being asked of them. And the longer it goes on, I think that I don't want it to become apathy towards it. But of course, I think they're hoping that people just get bored of having these conversations and it dies down and it goes away, and it doesn't become the focal point. But the reality is it's getting worse and worse all the time. Anyway, we will bring Phil McGinley on. There he is there. What's happening, Phil?
All right, guys. Not too bad. How are yous?
All good, Phil. All good.
Nice one.
Not,
nice one. He's
not
golfing about
impressed.
tonight.
Russell's back on performance-enhancing drugs this week. I've seen starting on his beers again. Obviously rattled at losing last week. That's the whole reason he gave up his alcohol for the month. That pledge he made. As soon as he loses 1 week of sudden death, he's back on the drink. Shocking.
I've actually since last Tuesday drank every single minute of the day because I just couldn't handle it.
The thought did cross my mind, Alex. Remember you said on a previous episode, Russell, you're better when you've had a wee drink on you in sudden death. And I was like, oh, okay. So it all makes sense now. Yes, but it's that time again, folks. It is sudden death. And last week, Jonathan got a much needed win to make it 13-9, 4 points in it. And as I said last week, the end date for this is the 29th of May, 2023, which means there are 11 more games to go, 11 more points on the board, guys. So yeah, we're getting down to the nitty gritty now. We're into the title running. So this is it. So I will get all the aesthetics set up. You two can feel free to, as I say, talk trash to each other, whatever you wish to do just now. I'll get all of that set up. It's 13-9, 4 points in it.
4 points in it, 11 to go.
11 to go.
I mean, imagine if you didn't win it, Russell. Imagine if you didn't win it from this position. It would be like a bigger collapse than what Rangers used to do. After
why would I imagine
they just collapse after Christmas every year?
So what do you need to win then? So it's with the 11 left, you would need to win. Oh, come on. You've got no chance. No way, no. You've got no chance, mate. I tried to imagine losing there, and then I realised how ridiculous the thought is. It's just not going to happen, son.
I can smell the fear.
The guy
dress it up well.
Clear has got the fear. That's clever, Jonathan. Don't you dare use my mind tricks on me, Potter. Come on!
Well, now the wrestling style promos are out the way to each other, we will get on with it. I always like to put a wee bit in there, like you say your piece before we do battle here. So there we go. All the fighting talk is now done. It's time to put the money on the table. Here we go again. So, Jonathan.
Comments are off.
Comments are off, yes. And it seems like everything is fine. Nobody's saying that the music's blaring again, thank God. Okay, so Jonathan, you won last week. Do you wish to go first or second this week?
I will go first, Phil.
Not a problem at all. I had a feeling that would be the answer. As I say, just mandatory. I need to ask it every week. Okay, so today's question has a very nice 21 correct answers. So plenty of stuff in the pool. Yeah.
Very generous
answers. And once again, for the second week in a row, the question has drawn some inspiration from a recent episode of Bustalgia.
Which I regularly attend, Phil, unlike Jonathan, who's always too busy. Funny that.
I know, it's funny how the questions always seem to work in your favour in that way, Russ.
But it was last week and you won, Jonathan. You won last week. And you do listen, you do reference at times on the show, you'll say, was Phil said on Bustalgia. So you do. So it's all even. It's all even. It's a even playing field. So here we go. The question today is, in the decade of 2000 to 2009, so that's your time range on this one, Celtic and Manchester United locked horns 9 times between competitive fixtures, testimonials, friendlies, and even some games played in the USA on glamour tours. So tonight's question is, can you name any goal scorer from that fixture?
I knew that.
And that includes
not
only Celtic players, but you can also give me a Man United player and you'll get a correct answer as well.
Okay.
So there's
that's interesting.
There is your curveball. So to break it down for you, there are 8 Celtic answers and 13 Man United answers. Any one that you can give me from either team, I will accept as a correct answer. From, any of the competitive games that I played, any of the friendlies that I played, I'll accept any answer from those games. 2000 to 2009.
Okay, well, I'll just start us off with the nice straightforward, and I'll say Nakamura.
Of course, yes.
I will go with Neil Lennon.
You are correct. Yes, indeed, he did score.
In short sleeve shirt.
Oh,
short sleeve shirt.
Very good. Very good. Very well remembered. I shall go for Scott McDonald.
Yeah, Scott McDonald. Yep.
Shit. Yeah. I will go for one of my other favourite Celts, as you know, Chris Sutton.
Oh, I was going to go Chris Sutton.
He scored in the Ryan Giggs testimonial and also scored out in the USA against them in a friendly.
I'm going to mix it up and go for a Manchester United player. I'm going to go for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
You would be correct, yes, indeed. 06-07 Champions League. Yep.
The Yana Venegura Fesselink.
Yes, indeed. He scored in the same game.
Very good. Right. Who else scored? We're into the guessing territory here. I'm going to say Ryan Giggs.
Ryan Giggs is correct. Yes.
That is literally my next answer.
Ryan Giggs scored the equaliser in the game that Scott McDonald scored in.
Yeah. See, I'm trying to remember the goals for them at Old Trafford.
But I was trying to do as well.
I can't picture one of them. I've erased them from my memory, man.
So have I.
What year was that? 2006. Shall we say maybe in America? Will we say Wayne Rooney?
Wayne Rooney's a correct answer. Scored in a Champions League game against us at Old Trafford.
Oh, very good. Very good.
4 each. So, gritty time.
I am going to go for another Manchester United player that I'm hoping might have scored in a friendly, and I'm going to go again on longevity. I'm going to say Paul Scholes.
Paul Scholes is correct. Yes, he did.
That was a tight one.
I'm out. I think I'm out.
Okay.
I've got no idea. Shit. 2000 to 2009. And we've played Champions League in 05-06. We'd have played them in America. Shall we guess? Ruud van Nistelrooy?
Oh, I had him.
Ruud van Nistelrooy is a correct answer. He scored.
Yes!
He scored in the Ryan Giggs testimonial that ended 4-3.
Yes.
He scored in that. So now it's 5 apiece. It's time for another 5 guesses maximum, if it's even required. If we do go the distance here, and it is a draw, we'll obviously have a wee sudden death tiebreaker. But yeah, we are down to the real nitty gritty now. Still a few big names on the board.
I feel like there's one we've missed that is. I feel like he must have done, but I don't know why neither of us have said them, which makes me think he hasn't.
I know the elephant in the room. I know the elephant in the room.
I just don't know whether to guess him or not because it feels too obvious. And I can't picture him scoring in this game. So I don't know if it's worthwhile going somewhere else. I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to go for somebody else who I think might have scored when we played them in the Champions League. And this is a guess as well. And it's a guess. It's Cristiano Ronaldo.
Oh, I don't remember him.
Cristiano Ronaldo is a bit of a contentious one. He didn't score against us in a Champions League game. He did score in Roy Keane's testimonial against us. Cristiano Ronaldo is correct, yes. I thought that was the one that you were dancing around there, Jonathan. You're like, oh,
no, I know he was dancing around.
Okay. Oh no,
are you going to be brave enough to get
now I know.
Now I know.
I'll go for another superstar. David Beckham.
David Beckham, I can tell you, is an incorrect answer. Are you, by any chance, thinking about the fracas that he got into, which is why Beckham's in your head?
Yeah.
I mean, Chris Sutton having a wee
slap.
Yes, indeed. David Beckham is a miss. So, Jonathan, that's 2 on the bounce. Yeah, and 2 shows that were related to Bustalgia, and you won both of them, Jonathan. So, no more your conspiracy chat, son. No more.
Easy. Phil, I listen every week. I listen like a hawk. He's too busy Stephen when he's on Bustalgia on a Friday night. It's his party night.
Do you want to know?
Bustalgia in a month.
You want to know the answers that he's missed. The Celtic ones are down to the nitty gritty.
Alan Thompson, was he one?
No. Paul
Henrik
Lambert.
was the elephant in the room, surely.
Henrik didn't score. Henrik wouldn't have been a right answer.
Yeah, but he was there. That was the elephant, though, wasn't it?
Yes, that was what I was thinking of.
First,
Yeah.
I thought you were thinking Cristiano Ronaldo.
No, Henrik was the elephant in the room.
I was trying to throw it to him and hope he was going to get it, so I could think of it.
I was trying to do the same to you.
So Paul Lambert's one of the goal scorers
That's
from the Ryan
annoying
Giggs
because I
testimonial,
should've got
as is Lubomir Moravchik. He's another one. The only other Celtic scorer came in the USA tour under Martin O'Neill in 2005, and it was Craig Beattie, or 2004, sorry.
Oh.
Craig Beattie scored. Now, the Man United scorers, there's one on this which you'll do very, very well to get it. Maybe, Russell, with you being a champ manager 0102, I think you might get this guy, but I'll give you the obvious. Yeah, Bojan Djordjic. Yeah. Tom Boyd testimonial in 2001. Bojan Djordjic scored. So did Mikel Silvestre. He scored that night. Juan Sebastian Veron scored in the Ryan Giggs testimonial. Alan Smith scored in the USA tour.
Erase that one. Delete that one.
We talked about this one on Friday night. Louis Saha scored the other
Had
two goals.
Saha as well, but I can only think of the penalty miss.
Yeah.
Dimitar Berbatov, the game that I said Wayne Rooney scored in a Champions League game against us, Berbatov scored that one. And the other one as well, now, Jonathan, you said that Paul Scholes, and I mentioned a friendly that we played on Friday night on Bustalgia where we beat 3-0 at the start of the season. Paul Scholes was playing with a bunch of youngsters, and Johnny Evans scored that day, a very, very young 18-year-old or 19-year-old Johnny Evans scored. Yeah, so there you go. So that's
that was good. I enjoyed that one.
So the
score getting a lot closer, comments, by the way.
Getting a lot closer. Everyone likes an underdog story, Russell. Everyone likes an underdog story.
Guys. It will not happen. 13-10.
13-10, 3 points.
What's the most amount of wins you've done in a row? 3?
4.
4.
4 in a row once.
It was 6-2 at one point. And you got back
if
to
you
6-6.
do 4 in a row, you'll still be behind if you equal your best ever run at there.
You keep telling yourself that, Russell. I know you're going to go and look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself these things to feel better.
No,
This is about to be a bigger come down for you than when you said Aaron Moy wouldn't make it at Celtic and said he was underwhelming. That's how bad this is going to be. That'll all be forgotten about come the end of the season. We'll get you a new T-shirt for the end of the season.
I am underwhelmed by that comment. But no, look, 13-10. I'm still there's a good gap there, Jonathan. It doesn't matter. Do you know what
10
I mean?
points left to play for, 3 points in it just now. So it's getting down that gritty.
Keep the Bustalgia questions coming, Phil. I'm a fan of these ones.
Well, I can tell you about Bustalgia this week if you want to tell you what's coming up. You might want...
I'm missing it this week.
Okay. So this week we're going to do a player special one, and it's a pretty big one. It's somebody who's got a very, very long career at Celtic, a lot of glory to talk about, and it is this guy, captain, leader, legend himself. It's going to be Scott Brown retrospective, as you can see in the picture. Where it all started with Gordon Strachan, and then all the managers that he won trophies under: Lennon, Rodgers, Dyler, and look at all the trophies. Look at the silverware that's in that picture alone. I think there was so many iconic pictures of Scott Brown that I could have put on that, and I was like, would I go with the theme here or the celebrations and for the youth and stuff? I was like, do you know what? Silverware, that's the theme. Lots and lots of stuff, lots of success. So
and quite in vogue right now with obviously the Hydro announcement.
That's true. Yes, it is indeed. Aye. So Scott Brown is going to be the player focused one this coming Friday on Bustalgia. Looking forward to doing that one.
I think that will go down a storm. I think
that'll be
really well.
That'll be a very good one.
To recognise as well. I think Bruni doing the Hydro thing. I think as much like his sort of final walk around the pitch.
Yeah.
At the end of his career that he never got to do because of the COVID season. I mean, when you look at actually the images of him leaving Celtic, considering the season we had, and the fact there was no fans. That, I mean, you used the word underwhelming earlier, but that was really underwhelming. Like Bruni leaving under that. I mean, that is not what all the work he'd done in his career at Celtic. The regeneration of Bruni, I've told you before, I think there was 2, not just 1. I think when Lennon took over and made him captain, that was his first one. I think he was a bit of a headless chicken before that. And he wasn't sure if he was a box-to-box midfielder, if not an attacking midfielder, trying to do the silky skills. Lennon kind of made him more that holding midfielder. And then I think obviously when Rodgers took over, he looked like he was on the way out. And that was another regeneration he did. I think you know, Brown is, you know, absolutely synonymous with our, you know, real success. The quadruple treble has his name all over it. His images of lifting those trophies is all over it and always will be. And I do feel like him leaving under the cloud of that bad season, but also with no one there to say thank you to him at the time, is a real sad ending. Do you know
Just
what I mean?
not a fitting end for him at all, was it?
No, it wasn't. And I think the Hydro move's actually quite good, because I think this is his opportunity, as I say, to walk around the pitch, if you like, and say cheerio again.
They did when he had his final game at Celtic Park. I mean, when I was looking for images to put together the collage for Bustalgia, you find the pictures on Google Images, and it's quite sad. They only say like a picture says 1,000 words, and it's the whole like he's walking out into the empty stadium just himself. Obviously, nobody there. You know, he's back to the camera, and then they do one where he's walking down the tunnel and he puts the arms out like the celebration. And it's quite sad to see. You're like, man, he deserved better. He deserved a better.
I agree with that.
He really did.
Horrible season and a horrible way to end up going out that way as well. Definitely deserved more from the sort of career he had.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's shit. It is shit, that, though. Do you know what I mean? It is like, Broony's one of those guys that I think, again, I think the longer time goes on, the more he'll start getting looked back on, with, you know, in a really favourable light, you know. One of the best things I ever seen him do, just on a wee, like on the pitch. I mean, I don't know if you remember Graham Dorrans. Again, this just shows you, you know, we're not paranoid that Graham Dorrans was getting heralded as the best midfielder in Scotland at one point. You know, what a signing, EPL legend and all this at West Brom. No bother, mate. And the first time they're head to head, and I think it's at Ibrox, and Bruni does that drag back and then just megs him, and then hits this beautiful pass up the line. But I don't know if do you remember the wee bit of skill that he does that he completely dumbfounds him, drags it back and then megs him. Oh, it's so good. And
I think people forget quite how good a player Scott Brown was as well.
Technically,
people
far better than he's given credit for.
Yeah, they just think of him as a hatchet man. A lot of people they don't really do him a good service at all in terms of what else he actually brought to the game, because he was more than capable of being a good player on the ball, just as he was off it. So yeah, definitely deserves his kudos, and it'll be a pretty good episode of Bustalgia, that one, I think.
Aye, that's a good one. Phil, who's on?
Well, just me, Liam, and we'll get two more. I'll go for a 4-man team for this one. It's Scott Brown. I think many of our team will have a lot to say about Scott Brown. There's plenty of material. You don't even need that much studying. I mean, he's ingrained in the last decade at Celtic, so yeah, it's going to be a good one. I'm
getting schooled by Kieran in the comments tonight, mate. Honestly, you took me to school tonight. I love that. I love that. One thing as well, like, see, when it comes to like getting slagged off, there was some plant pot on Twitter, like, you know, I would rather an empty seat than someone who listens to the Bhoycie Bus beside me or whatever. He's called Shy or something like that on Twitter. I'm like, no worries, mate. You know what I mean? Get those bastards out of our club. You're right. He never replied, funnily enough. You know what I mean? It's like, I think you have to be able to self-deprecate at times. You know what I mean? If you can get the piss ripped out you and it's funny, like Kieran's very good at tonight, I think you just kind of, you got to take on the chin sometimes. Be able to take the piss out. I know it's difficult for certain wee fellas and that, but I like having the piss ripped at me. You know what I mean? I think it's fun in games. Kieran is spot on. Doran's underwhelming sign. Yeah, disappointed. On that note, on that note, we will call it there. There's no breakfast bar tomorrow. There will be a TNF. Phil, you're hosting the TNF this Thursday.
I'll host the TNF, yep, because you're moving, so busy man.
It's all about fucking radio rental now in Boise land. So it's been good to fit this in, actually. It's been a nice wee relief. I've had 2 pint cans of Stella and talked about Celtic. It's actually quite good because it's back to the stresses of it all tomorrow. It's difficult when it's on your own. This is what, you know, you're meant to have a partner for, isn't it? They're meant to help you out with these things. Girl or a boy, not a sexist comment. Either or, do you know what I mean? They're like, do it all yourself. I'm not cut out for this. I'm not cut out for all this responsibility stuff. So, anyway, yes, thank you for taking over the wheel on the TNF.
Enjoy the problem.
Bustalgia.
Yep.
I'll be back. The next time you'll see me will be Sunday. Is that 5 days? There'll be withdrawals on both sides, guys. Both sides. I'm only kidding. Anyway, I'll see you all later. We'll be back for the TNF Thursday.
I mean, you've all that stuff at the start. You know, they won't be playing Tina Turner on the coach on the way home, will they?
Some of his comments about me deliberately trying to cause controversy. Well, I'm like in the media now. And you've got someone sitting there next to you who's an embarrassment to the media profession. He's an apologist. He's a charlatan. He's a Rangers puppet. He's a cheerleader. That's what he is.